This week's edition of our Four Questions Journalist Spotlight is brought to you by Leff Atlanta Media, Atlanta's best journalist database. Subscribe at leffsatlantamedia.com. All right, welcome to the next edition of our Four Questions Journalist Spotlight, where we talk with a local journalist, usually Metro Atlanta, sometimes North Georgia, about their jobs, their roles, their history, and then we ask them kind of the hardest question of the day: what is the coolest thing about you? So I always throw that one out there so our guests can have a couple of minutes to think about it. And there's always something cool about somebody. So we're going to get to that. So Rick Folbaum with WANF Atlanta News First. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Mitch. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So I want to talk about. I know you've got a new-ish show, and that focuses on politics. But let's talk a little bit first about how long you've been at WANF Atlanta News First, and kind of the road that brought you there.
Sure. So our newish show that you mentioned is called On the Record. We launched it in August. It started off as a 30-minute show, but happy to say that as of this coming Sunday, the 15th, we are expanding to 1 hour, which I think is fitting given the amount of political news there is here in our state.
Yeah.
So looking forward to
Mitch
that.
here with a little reminder to subscribe today to our Leff Atlanta Media database, the best database of Atlanta media. You get to search all the media in town, get to look at their beats, get their contact information, get to know what they like. You also get our great PR guidelines. You learn how to do PR. You get our media blog, Mitch's Media Musings, and you get to see our Four Questions Journalist Spotlight. So subscribe today.
To back up and give you a little bit of history, I've been here at WANF since before it was WANF. I started here in 2019 when it was CBS 46. And the time that I've been here, I've been here through the sale of the channel from one media company to another. We're now owned by Gray. Gray decided to change the name of CBS 46 to Atlanta News First. And then as of last summer, Gray decided that to take us independent. So we are no longer affiliated with CBS at all. We are fully independent, which I think is great because it really allows us to focus on Georgia, North Georgia, and local news, which I think is what people are looking for. We're not obligated to run any network programming. We don't have to worry about breaking into some sporting event. We can do what we want when we want, and my bosses have created a whole bunch of new programming. And part of that is On the Record. That's one of the shows that has come about as a result of this. So it's all good news, I think, as far as we're concerned. I came to Atlanta News First after spending a year at CNN International, which is where I landed when I first moved to Atlanta with my family in 2018. Spent a year there, and then got a call from the people over here and inviting me to come over and anchor the evening news, which I did for a number of years. And then 2 years ago, I moved to the morning shift, and that's now what I do during the week. Sort of my Monday through Friday job is anchoring in the mornings, and then we have the Sunday show, which airs at 11 o'clock. But this is sort of the latest step in what's been a long career for me. I started off on camera at Fox News Channel in 1996. I was part of the launch team for Fox. I was there really before they even turned the lights on. They were still building the studios. And I watched Fox News really grow from a cable network that at the time we were broadcasting in New York City and living in New York City, but you couldn't watch Fox News Channel in New York City. It wasn't carried by the local cable systems at the time. And of course, now we all know what Fox News has become in the media landscape. I was there for 17 years, from 96 to 2013, when we moved down to South Florida. really sort of a personal decision, not so much a professional decision. But we were looking to move someplace warm, someplace closer to family. I've got a lot of family down in South Florida. And so we headed down to Miami. I worked for about 5 years at the CBS affiliate in Miami, CBS 4 WFOR, anchoring their evening news there. And that's where we were immediately before coming to Atlanta. So we're here now, and I don't want to go anywhere else. I love Atlanta. My family loves Atlanta. We love the schools. I love the climate. I love the whole thing has just really worked out better than I ever could have imagined.
Yeah, well, and now you're in the perfect city for the perfect weather. You don't have 4 feet of snow in the winter like New York has now. You don't have 110 degrees of heat like South Florida does in the summer. It's cool breezes and 72 degrees 12 months a year in Atlanta, right? That's what
It's the best. It's the best of everything. It
that's
really
what the
is.
Chamber of Commerce says, right?
That's right.
I had an event a couple weeks ago, and my clients, some of them were down from New York and Massachusetts, and it was a Sunday when it was like, 72 degrees and sunny here in Atlanta, and they were all overdressed. They came down with their sweaters and heavier clothes and jackets, and they were shedding layers and trying to get down this because it was such a beautiful day. And they're like, "Is it like this all the time?" And I think it was February.
You
It's
know
like,
how
yeah,
pictures pop up on your phone, sort of this day
right,
from
right, right.
20 years ago. I've been getting pictures that have been popping up of me shoveling snow out in front of my old house in Westchester County, and I don't miss shoveling snow for sure. And I don't miss those giant mountains of dirty snow that cover the streets of New York City for months and months and months until they finally go away. So my
Yeah.
heart goes out to all my friends who are back up north dealing with all of this, including my brother and sister who were in New Jersey. But I've always said, come on down here. It really is perfect.
Yeah, I grew up in New York, and yeah, I don't miss the months of snow. I don't mind a little bit of snow, a couple inches here and there. Get a day off once in a while, and wander out on the no, the streets with no traffic. But yeah, I don't. I'm good with this. So let's talk about the show. So you're expanding from 30 minutes to 60, and tell folks what time does the show air
Show airs at 11 o'clock. So
on
from 11 to 12 on
on
Atlanta News First.
on Sundays?
On
On Sundays.
Sundays,
On
yes.
Sundays.
And
Okay.
and I should tell you, we stream all of our shows, all of our content dating back to our first episode is available for streaming anytime on any of the streaming platforms. We have our own YouTube channel. You can find it anywhere you stream. And we do a lot of newsmaker interviews. So for the show, for the broadcast show, we tend to cut those interviews down just for time. But we put the raw interviews, the entire unedited interview online so that folks can see, exactly the way that these interviews went as we were doing the questions and answers with the newsmaker. I think it just adds context. We certainly, when we cut it down, we're not looking to alter the intent or what the newsmaker was trying to say. It's really just done for timing purposes. But I think that it's a great resource to be able to tell our viewers that they can watch the entire unedited version of it. And so that goes with any interview that we do.
Yeah, and there's no way. I mean, if you spend half an hour interviewing someone, there's no way to include the whole thing. But it is
Yeah.
cool that you give people the opportunity to see the whole thing. Uh, you and I were at the Atlanta Press Club debates for the 14th district a couple of weeks ago, and you were a panelist for one of those. And by the time this airs, we will know who probably who the. I guess I'm sure there'll be a runoff because there's 18 candidates, I think, for that District 14 seat, formerly held by Marjorie Taylor Greene in Northwest Georgia. Um, what did you get out of that? What was interesting about kind of hosting, not hosting, but being a panelist on that debate?
What I took away was that there are a number of very smart, well-intentioned people who I think, are ready to commit themselves to public service. I think that, these were serious candidates. There were a lot of them, as you mentioned. There still are a lot of them. And you're right, there is likely to be a runoff, because the way things work here is that one candidate, in order to win outright, has to get 50% plus one. And given the number of candidates who are on the ballot today, it's very unlikely that anyone is going to be able to reach that threshold. So we will most likely be looking at a runoff election. April the 7th is the date for that. But I was very impressed with the candidates on the panel that I took part in. It was a candidate forum more than it was a debate. So it was really a chance for us to ask these candidates questions that are important to viewers, that are in the news right now, about issues that impact Northwest Georgia, which is, of course, where the 14th district is, issues that impact the state, and, even national and international stories as well, to get their take on, for example, the Trump administration's immigration policies and the building of more ICE detention centers here in Georgia and around the country, just as an example of one of the sort of national stories that we got to talk to them about. But I really did walk away thinking, well, you know what? The voters in Georgia 14, they really have their work cut out for them, because there are a number of people
a lot of candidates
who I think would do a very respectable job.
Well, the press club, and you mentioned it was more of a forum than a debate, and the press clubs, they usually are more debates, but when there's that many candidates up on the stage, and I've worked with the press club with these debates for a number of years, and I think we had 10 in one. We had kind of split those candidates into two, so there were like 10 and 8 or something like that. And it's you want to keep the debates at a reasonable amount of time so people don't tune out, but they get something with it. So yeah, it does become more of a you have 2 minutes to tell us your position on this, as opposed to when you get to the runoffs and we get to a debate where there's 2 or 3 or 4 people, then that's when you get into a little more of the sharper back and forth between specific candidates and the more, I don't know. So sometimes it gets a little interesting. Well, it often gets a little bit interesting, especially with District 14 has been interesting for a number of years, listening to how those debates have flowed. So, by the time this, as I said, by the time this podcast airs, we'll know who the runoff candidates are for that debate. But talk to me about what makes what's a little bit. Is there something a little bit different about how you structure your show? Versus what some of the other, there's a couple of kind of political shows out there, community shows.
Yeah.
What would you say? What are viewers going to see a little bit different about your show than they might see on another station?
So here's my pitch. When I book the show, when I call people to invite them to come on, whether it's for a newsmaker interview. And I should mention that I co-host the show with our political reporter, Doug Reardon, who is very, very talented and just a real bright guy. But when we put the show together and we invite people to come on, either as a newsmaker for a sit-down interview or as our panelists, because we do panel segments each show, I tell them, look, especially for the panel segments, I spent the first chunk of my career working in cable news. I got all of the sort of screaming, cable news style smackdown, debates out of my system, and that what we're going for on the record is more substance than screaming. So when we do a panel segment and we talk about the issues of the day, we talk about the races, we talk about the newsmakers whose interviews we've just watched. It's really more about having a respectful conversation, so that even if our panelists disagree, they don't have to do it disagreeably. They can be respectful of each other. There's no shouting, and I think that is something that really, I hope, lends a certain degree of credibility and I think it's more comfortable to watch. I mean, I think that if people are looking for a scream fest, there's certainly no shortage of places for them to go to watch that on any given day. But if they want to hear people who are really tapped in, who know what's going on, either as policymakers, lawmakers, strategists, and they want to hear, an insider's take on what's really happening here in our state. I would humbly suggest that they tune into On the Record, because that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Excellent. And it's funny, in conversations, this 14th district, for example, there's an interesting kind of schedule, because we've got the special election today, and then they fill out the remainder of her term, but then they also have to run again in November. So you've got the primary, the special election, then there's a runoff for the special election,
Right.
then they have to run again in November, and if there's a runoff for that, then they have to
There
run
could be
again.
a runoff for
There
that.
could be a runoff for
Exactly.
that. So they could run four. There could be 4 elections for them within 1 year. And Congress is not in session a whole lot in the summer, so their actual service time is going to be a month or two, and then lots of campaigning in between. But
That's right. But, I mean, I think that anybody that wants to seriously, have that job, first of all, winning this special election, even though it's just to fill out the remainder of Marjorie Taylor Greene's term, it still sort of puts them in a good position to win in the general election for the full term in November. They sort of come into it as an incumbent, as opposed to somebody who doesn't win in this special election. But then decides that they want to try it again, and they're really starting from square one. I think that it's asking a lot of the voters of the 14th district to ask them to keep showing up at the polls, as you said, 4 or 5 times in the course of a year. You talk about voter fatigue. I'm very interested to see what kind of turnout we get for the special election, and then as we get into these other primary elections, whether people are motivated enough to come out and vote again and again and again.
Yeah, I mean, we've got there's the 14th district, so that's one thing, and I should say that district runs from Northwest Georgia, like almost Dalton, Georgia, all the way down to Cobb
down
County,
into Cobb.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a strange, huge, amorphous amoeba district, but we got governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general. We have a Senate race. And then obviously congressional races.
And then we have every congressional race, right? Because as we know,
Public Service Commission.
There are 2 Public Service Commission seats that are up for grabs, and and again after the special election for 2 seats just recently that were won by 2 Democrats, I think that there's going to be a lot of attention on that on those races as well.
It's interesting because the PSC has always been kind of I've always called it the most important race that no one cares about, right?
Right.
Because you complain about your power bills every month, but then the voter turnout for the PSC elections is never huge, and people they should be paying more attention to it, because these are the people who help set what you're going to be paying for.
Well, that's right. And I think that, with this year's sort of theme being affordability, I think that it has really put a spotlight on the role of these commissioners, and how they really do have an impact on people's budgets.
Wow. Are there any, so obviously we've got all those races, and this 2026 is just a blockbuster year for someone who's got a political show, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's why we had to expand to an hour.
Only an hour. Oh, you got all the online too. But you're also hosting the morning show, right? So in addition to everything you're gonna have to do to run the political show, you gotta run your day job, as they say, right? Or your morning job.
That's right.
Talk to me a little bit about the morning show. What's the flow of that? How early are you getting into work for that one?
I get in pretty early. I get in at 3:30 in the morning, and I'm on the air at 4, and I anchor a 3-hour block from 4 to 7 a.m. It's an unusual time to start the day. And dark and early, as we say. But I do think that first of all, we're really the only ones on at that time. I think that some of our competitors start at 4:30. So for anyone who is either a super early riser or someone who maybe works the night shift and has just gotten home, there are a lot of shift workers in our area, and I'm one of them. People that aren't working 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and people that need to know the weather and the traffic and the news headlines as they get ready to head out the door at what may be an unusually early hour for some, but not not for everybody. So
and I mentioned that show is a little bit of a. It's not people watching obviously for 3 hours. It's people watching for 30, 40 minutes as they're getting ready to get out the door, or as they're coming back from work and getting ready to go to sleep, get their dinner going at 5 o'clock in the morning if they're getting off their shift. But I know the show does a good mix of news, weather, traffic, features, some guests here and there. Is there anything about the show that folks should know about if they're if they have a guest they want to book on the show? What should they know about? Who should they be talking to?
Well, we don't do guests on the 3-hour block that I host.
You're not getting guests in the studio at 4 a.m.
You know what? I know a lot of PR people who would be very happy to book their clients on a 6 a.m. Newscast.
6 a.m. but not 4 a.m.
Probably not 4 a.m. No, I see your point there. But
yeah.
Most of our guest segments are in the later morning hours, the 8 o'clock show, the 9 o'clock show. Those are shows that are anchored by my colleagues, and Gravier, Dinza, and Brooks Baptiste, and they do a great job sitting down with people in our community, and we've got some great producers who are really, really talented and very good at coming up with and finding guests and topics that are really relevant and impactful for our viewers. I think that someone tuning in to my 3-hour block, we can promise them that they are going to get the weather and the traffic, because we know that those are the two big drivers for morning show viewers, people who are getting set to head out the door. They want to know what they should dress their kids in before they send them off to the bus stop. They want to know if it's going to be raining later on in the day, and they want to know if 285 is backed up and maybe they should find an alternate route. And that's typically the case. So we really do focus on those two things. It's the weather and the traffic, because our research has shown that those are the two things that are most important. But at the same time, as the news guy, I want to just put a plug in for the news, and we really do, I think, an exceptional job at covering breaking news. So we have the breaking news tracker, we call it, and that is the sort of the news vehicle that our reporters head out on and head to scenes whenever we know of a breaking story, and we can really mobilize and get to wherever there is news quickly, and really do a very thorough job, a complete job of covering that story, even as it's breaking. And because of our format, and like you said, people aren't sitting down and watching for 3 hours, we can keep going back and updating the story. So, we'll give you the news and the weather virtually every few minutes, but if there is a breaking story, we're going to keep updating that as well. And I think that anybody who's interested in in knowing what's happening in their community as they jumpstart their day is going to be able to get everything they need to know, really in about 30 minutes. I mean, that's really, and maybe even less. We really try to crank it out there and get that information out there on a real, rotating, repeating basis.
Well, let's shout out also. Credit to your morning reporters who are out there in the field. So you've got
Don Shipman. Yep. Don Shipman is I think he lives in the breaking news tracker. I'm not sure, but he really is out there most mornings heading from one story to the next. And, anybody who's been a general assignment reporter knows, you get sent to one story, and then you could be on your way there only to then get a call from your producer telling you, turn around. We need you to head, out to Cummings because there's something happening there.
It happens to me. I get that all the time. I get somebody calls and says, "Hey, I need this source for a story," and then we book it, and then 5 minutes later, I get switched to this. Oh, wait, I get switched back to that. Wait, you still got that person?
And Don does it so gracefully. He doesn't get bent out of shape. It really takes a special kind of person, I think, to play that role and to do that job. And Don is really very talented. But we've got a number of excellent reporters who we have in the morning. Niamani Watson is a relatively new addition to our team, and I would encourage people to look out for her on our morning show. She is just as solid as they get, and I don't want to slight anybody else.
We got Sarah
Hammond. Sarah Hammond does a great job as well. So we've got a really great roster of reporters here, all of whom are able to, jump in and cover any kind of story, from a tragedy like what happened with the teacher who was run over in Hall County, to a story involving, a special, tribute to someone who's doing good in their community. So we try to cover it all. And we know that because it's the morning time, you do need to sort of focus on some of the lighter stories, because people starting their day don't want to be, smacked in the face with,
want to be uplifted, right?
A little bit, yeah. We've got to tell you what's happening, but if we can mix in some good stuff as well, I think that's very helpful. I know that as a news consumer myself, I need that. I can't watch a newscast that is just, doom and gloom.
Fire, shooting,
yeah,
robbery. Sometimes I'll see a newscast and I'll be thinking, why did that producer stack that way? I mean, maybe break it out a little bit, unless they decide, hey, let's get all the bad stuff done in the A block and then move to other stuff. All right, well, let's move to the lighter side, okay? So what's something? So this is the hard question I warned you about. So what's something cool or fun about Rick that people might not know?
Well, I think that one thing that I know makes me different from just about everybody I know is that I have 5 children, and I set out. I knew I wanted to be a dad, and I have a great one as a role model. My dad, Bruce, and there was something that I knew that I wanted to have, not only a career but a family as well. And and I just have been blessed, with 5 children, and I think that 4 of them are exceptional. I'm joking.
That's a good one. Don't let the 5th one guess which one you're talking about, right?
They're great kids, and and my oldest is 21 and my youngest is 12, and I'm very involved in their lives. My oldest daughter is studying abroad right now, and I was just on the phone with a doctor in Florence, Italy, because she needs to see someone to get a prescription filled. So trying to figure all of that out from here in Atlanta while she's over in Europe. And then I have my 12-year-old son who has some special learning challenges, and we are constantly going to see different specialists and therapists for him, and and it really just is. It's just I love what I do. I love my job and my career. I take it very seriously, but what I really live for are my kids. And I just, when people say, do you have any hobbies? Do you play golf? I'm like, no.
I have 5.
No,
let me go back to I have 5 kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you not hear me say I have 5 kids?
those are my hobbies. The 5 of them are my hobbies. So,
Good.
People say, "Do you have any kids?" I said, "Yep." They say, "How many?" And I tell them, and they say, "Wow." And I say, "Yes, wow
There
is
you
right."
go. There you go. All right. So this next couple of questions is kind of a little bit about what I call the lightning round. So you don't have to don't go too deep. Just kind of quick, short answers. So what's the last book you've read, or one or the other, last podcast you've listened to?
Okay. So the last podcast I listened to was a podcast from the New Yorker Radio Hour with David Remnick. I love the New Yorker magazine. David Remnick talking with two film critics about the Oscars, which are coming up this weekend. I'm a huge movie fan, and I love the Academy Awards. For many, many years, I had a streak of, I think, about 12 years where I won our friends' Oscar pool
Win the
every
pool.
single year, was able to pick the winners. So that was the last podcast that I read. But I'm reading a really good book, too, called A Thousand Acres. Which is not a new book. I think it was written back in the 1980s or early 90s, but it's sort of a retelling of the story of King Lear, but it's set on an Iowa farm, and
Okay.
it's
All
really
right.
good. Sometimes I have to
Um,
put the news down. Stop looking at the headlines, and just sort of let my mind go someplace totally different.
yeah, and that's a good plan. I don't do enough of that. Okay. Favorite local restaurant?
Little Rays.
Ah, good choice. Good choice. On Cheshire Bridge there.
Yep, there are a couple different locations. I
Okay.
just went the other night to one right off of North Side. That is a really good spot. Great for families. I went there with my son, and there's kids can run around and play while the parents eat dinner and drink margaritas. I don't
Ah,
think
there
it
you go.
gets any better than that.
All right. Favorite guilty pleasure?
Ah, a dirty martini
Good one. Good.
or two.
Local or two. Favorite local getaway?
Favorite local getaway. My two of my kids go to camp up in Helen, Georgia, and it's right in our backyard here, and I really discovered it as a result of driving them up and back from camp. But spending some time there, they've got an Oktoberfest, and just a really nice walk around community where you can just, go into different shops. It has sort of the German theme to it, and
Right.
just a really nice place. And you don't even feel like you're in Georgia, and
Yeah.
you're up in the mountains too. It's a
Yeah.
really, really nice.
It is a fun place. Okay. Last question. Favorite non-work hobby? And you can go back to. Did you not hear that I have 5 kids?
um, my favorite non-work hobby, I would say probably listening to music. I'm a big music fan, and anytime I can listen to some new music, and my kids introduce me to a lot of the newer artists who I probably would not know about if not for them. And thankfully, I'm raising kids with very good musical taste. Most of the time, I really like the stuff that they turn me on to, and I also love to listen to music while I work out. So it's a really good way to hear some of the new stuff that's going on, and I love the old stuff too. My favorite of all time is Prince, and I have a remember when Prince didn't go by the name Prince, he went by that unpronounceable symbol.
Yeah,
So
the
I
symbols.
have the symbol, the decal of the symbol on the back of my car,
Ah, there you
and
go.
I can't tell you the number of times people will honk at me and point to my decal, and give me a thumbs up,
It's
that
like
they love Prince too.
if you know, you know, right? Awesome,
Exactly.
awesome. Well, we have been talking with Rick Folbaum with Atlanta News First. Rick, thank you so much for taking some time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mitch. It was great to talk to you. I really appreciate your interest.
Yeah, and as always, you can find our archive of 4 Questions Journalist Spotlights in video form on YouTube. Just Google 4 Questions Journalist Spotlight. We're the only one. It'll pop right up. And if you want to listen on audio, if you're at the gym like Rick and you want to listen to a podcast, just again put it into the Google machine and it'll pop up on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all of those different ways so you can listen to it anywhere and anywhere you want. And as always, if you want to learn about Atlanta Media, make the connections, check out our Leff's Atlanta Media website. You get access to the directory of journalists, plus our Mitch's Media Musings blog that comes out every month, and our great PR guidelines section where you learn how to kind of learn some great PR tips. All right, everyone, thank you very much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.